What does this bombshell woman see in this old man? It cut through the Friday night din of Murphy's Tavern in Denver. My name is Yaron Archer, I'm 48 years old. I served 20 years in the Special Forces, where I learned to recognize a man's intentions at first sight. And these 3 college kids had been ogling my wife Lara and me for the last hour. They were sitting at their table in the corner, pointing and whispering to each other. Lara squeezed my hand under the table. She is 44 years old but still looks young, in her early 30s. That night she was wearing the blue dress that brought out her eye color, the one that caught the amber hue of her hair in the bar lights. We've been married for 25 years, but my heart still stops for a moment every time I look at her. Shall we go, my love? I said, keeping my voice calm. Just as I was getting up, the loudest one, a blond boy with his hat on backwards, got up from his seat. His 2 friends were right next to him, like 3 kings out for a street walk. The blonde was wearing a University of Colorado sweatshirt. He barely weighed 70 pounds, and that too when wet. I'm really curious, he said loudly, in a tone that could be heard over half a bar. Why is a woman like that with someone like you? I paused. Lara's fingers tightened on my arm. I looked around out of the corner of my eye. Silence had fallen. Pete, the bartender, looked up from wiping the counter. The second boy entered the conversation, a short guy, still wearing his high school jacket. She's probably changing his diapers too, he said sarcastically. The third one, tall, thin, with greasy hair, cut in front of us. Come on, darling, he said with a grin, this grandfather is probably out of commission, his rifle doesn't fire anymore. I looked at them. I really looked. Soft hands, branded jeans, expensive watches. These were guys who had never been punched once in their lives, who had only seen fights in movies and thought they were tough. Yes, son, sure, I said, nodding with a calm smile. Lara recognizes that tone. It was the tone I used to use years ago with young soldiers in training. Calm, measured, but with a hint of danger underneath. The blond boy mistook my silence for weakness. He puffed out his chest, like a chicken. What do you mean, old man? He said. Nothing, I said. We're just leaving. But as we turned our steps toward the door, I felt that shift of energy coming from behind. Pete the bartender gave me a brief look. His eyes seemed to say, sorry, Yaron. This night is going to end badly. And he was right, the action would be felt tonight. 20 years ago, tonight would have ended very differently. I was Staff Sergeant Archer then. A man who breathed discipline, disciplining young soldiers in close combat training at Camp Pendleton. I had no patience for disrespect. But he changed everything. Lara. I first met her in 1999. It was just after my 3rd deployment. At the time, Lara was a nurse in the emergency room at Denver Military Hospital. She was one of those rare people who could understand the scars of war without being told. The first time I saw her, she was holding the hand of an elderly Vietnam veteran. The man had woken up from his nightmares and was shaking and crying. Lara just shook his hand, said nothing, but the man calmed down. That's when I knew, this woman was different. A year later we got married. She wanted children, but it was not meant to be. So we gave all our love to each other. She held on to me in the throes of civilization. She supported me from nursing school to graduate school. Now, she heads the trauma unit at Presbyterian Hospital. The same corner table, the same Friday crowd, even the same bartender Pete. Years had passed, but the memories remained. As soon as Lara took off her coat, I noticed the silence at their table. The giggles, the whispers, the dirty looks without lifting their heads. The blonde would occasionally turn her head and look at Lara. I recognized that look. When I was stationed abroad, I used to see the same look in bars. A drunk soldier thinks he can have something that doesn't belong to him. And it always ends the same way. Lara noticed it too, of course, but she didn't mind. She is a woman who has learned to carry attention quietly for years. She always kept that careful distance that comes with being married to me. "They're just kids, Yaron," she said in a whisper. "Never mind." But I kept hearing their voices. Fragments of sentences mingled with laughter. This woman with this man? Pity. Wasted beauty. She must have forgotten the real action. The line had been crossed. The blond boy passed our table on his way to the restroom. He slowed his pace. He looked Lara up and down, as if he was looking at an object, not a woman. Then he winked. Lara turned her head. At that moment, for the first time all night, I felt uncomfortable. That's when I decided, we're getting up. Not that I was scared, but a night of celebration didn't deserve to be so cheap. But the old soldier in me knew. Kids like that don't quit easily. Ego is more dangerous than booze. The parking lot in front of Murphy's Tavern was dim. The streetlights cast long shadows. The silence of the night had swallowed the noise of the night before. Lara and I were walking to the car. The cold air turned our breath into steam, our footsteps echoed on the snow. At that moment a voice pierced the darkness. "Hey! Where are you going?" The blond boy. His voice echoed off the asphalt. We weren't done talking. My steps stopped. Lara's hand went to my palm like a reflex. She does that whenever she gets nervous. We spent 26 years together. And she remembers my 3 fights well. They were all over before they started. "Yaron," she said slowly, her voice trembling with worry. "Let's go." "Forget it." I turned. The 3 of them were there. Standing like confident shadows under the parking lot light. The blonde one had a cell phone in her hand. She was probably getting ready to turn that night into a heroic video. "Look, here's the thing," said the short one, the one in the high school jacket. "We think your wife should spend some time with real men." The tall, skinny one laughed. "Yeah, she should remember the old days." At that moment something clicked inside me. It wasn't anger, more like the turning of a key. Civilian Yaron is gone. Replaced by Sergeant Archer. Lara feels this change. She recognizes it in the way my shoulders tense, my breathing slows. "It's okay, honey," I said calmly. "These kids just want to dance a little." The blond boy frowned. "Dancing? What the hell are you talking about, old man?" "It means this," I said, not taking my eyes off them. "You came after us. You thought you were strong. So come on, are you really?" I took off my jacket. Slowly, I folded it and handed it to Lara. It was a ritual, not a reflex. For years, when I demonstrated fighting techniques in training, I used the same gesture. As I rolled up my sleeves, they heard the sound. In the silence, even the rustle of the fabric sounded like a threat. "Okay," I said. "One rule. Come one at a time. Otherwise I'll get bored." The 3 looked at each other. Then started laughing. The blond boy put his phone in his pocket, snapping his fingers. "Are you serious, old man? Against the 3 of us?" "One at a time," I said again. "Or you're scared." That sentence touches the weakest point of young men, pride. Lara took a few steps back, stepped in front of the truck. She knew what was coming. She knew who I had trained for years, what I had become. The blonde stretched her shoulders, stepped forward. The other 2 took up a support position from behind. But they didn't understand this. 20 years of training doesn't fade with age. It just goes quiet. And wakes up at the right moment. The blonde, the leader of their group, the self-styled hero, quickened his pace. He had that typical confidence in his face. He had never been in a big fight in his life, but he was brave enough to imitate scenes he had seen in the movies. "This is for you, Grandpa," he shouted. And pulled back his right fist with all his might. I had seen what he was going to do 3 seconds before. His shoulder dropped, his weight shifted to the back foot, a complete beginner's attack. I felt time. In the army we called it slow motion Sunday. that moment when adrenaline slows down time and you see every detail crystal clear. I just took a step to the left. His punch went right through my ear canal. Even the air felt the speed of movement. And then physics spoke. The boy's weight quickly succumbed to its own momentum. He lost his balance, his arms flailing in the air. All I could do was stay in place. The sound of his head hitting the brick wall of Murphy's Tavern was like a watermelon hitting concrete. Silence. Then a groan. The short one in the high school jacket yelled, "Brad!" Turns out his name was Brad. He ran to him, but Brad's face was no longer recognizable. His nose was bloody and he was half unconscious. My face is broken," he mumbled through his teeth. I shrugged. "You broke it, son." I just stepped aside. The short boy, I think his name was Tyler, was seeing me in a different light now. The confident demeanor was gone, replaced by anger mixed with fear. "Brad was just unlucky," he said, taking off his jacket. "I played football in high school." I smiled. "Great," I said. "So you like to hit?" He lowered his shoulder and charged. Like a linebacker headbutting an opponent in a game. But there was one thing he forgot. For 20 years I had taught him to direct this kind of acceleration. I waited for his last 2 steps. When he opened his arms, I grabbed his hands and turned his own power against him. I spun. His body momentum is more brutal than muscle power. Tyler hit the giant garbage container behind him with his side. The metal echoed, almost like a gong. But it didn't stop. Momentum threw him upwards. His legs went up in the air. And the boy found himself upside down, falling into the container. "Help!" he shouted from inside. "I'm stuck." I looked down. The sleeves of his jacket were tangled around his head, his legs were in the air, he was wallowing in the garbage. 20 years in the Special Forces will teach you patience, son, I said. And leverage. The third boy, the one with the long, greasy hair, I'd heard his name was Jake, was stepping backwards now. Panic and desperation alternated between his gaze. Brad with a broken nose on one side. Tyler struggling in the trash can on the other. And there I was. Not even breathing. "This is crazy," he said. "It's a crime to attack people." I raised my eyebrows. "I didn't touch anyone, son. They made themselves miserable." Jake was stepping backwards now. "This is bullshit," he said in a shaky voice. "You attacked people." "Wrong," I said coolly. "I just stepped aside." "You hit them at your own speed." Jake pulled out his cell phone, his fingers shaking. "I'll call the police," he said, his voice cracking. "Great idea," I said. "Tell them about 3 young men following a couple into a dark parking lot." That sentence burst Jake's pride. Instead of calling the police, he shoved the phone in his pocket. In an instant, he shifted, pulled himself together, gritted his teeth, and slyly shifted to the side, readying his fist. But the problem was muscle movement out of the corner of his eye. Body center of gravity, breathing rate. Everything was screaming, the next move is from the right. The punch was thrown. But I ducked. Snap. His fist landed not on my head, but on the parking meter behind me. The echo of the metal echoed throughout the parking lot. Then came Jake's scream, a pure, primal scream of pain, neither angry nor proud. "My hand. My fucking hand is broken." He fell to his knees. Tears were streaming from his eyes. One hand pressed against his chest with the other. His fingers were at an unnatural angle. "No, son," I said slowly. "I didn't break it. You just smashed your own hand, along with adrenaline, against the laws of physics." At that moment the door of the bar opened. People were coming out. Pete at the front, followed by a few customers. Some of them already had their phones on the record button. Brad was still sitting against the wall. covered in blood, his nose crooked. Tyler was still inside the container, legs in the air, still trying to get out. And Jake collapsed on the floor, crying. "Somebody call an ambulance," he moaned. "I already did," said one of the female customers. "I pressed 911 when I heard the scream." Laura came up to me quietly, as if it was years ago. She handed me my jacket. "I know that look. When we first met 25 years ago." She looked at me the same way. "Are you okay, Yaron?" she asked. I smiled as I put my arms in my jacket. "Great." Just then Jake shouted one last time. "This old man attacked us." Pete stepped forward, quiet since the bar. "Son," he said, his voice full and clear. "I watched the whole thing from the window. You three chased them, then spilled out on your own. This guy didn't even hit once." One of the women held up her phone. "I recorded it. I have everything. You fell by yourselves." The man was just standing there. Jake's face paled. The whole victimization plan melted away in the light of the cameras. Pete shrugged. "Physics, guys," he said with a smile. "For every action, there's a reaction. And tonight, that payoff was hard." Sirens began to sound in the distance. First the ambulance, then police cars. Red and blue lights danced with reflections in the snow. Laura took my arm. "We're going to give us a statement, right?" "Of course," I said. "There is no need to hide the truth." There was panic on the faces of the young people. Brad was crying while holding his nose. Tyler was finally out of the container, but in the garbage, miserable. Jake couldn't move his fingers. I didn't have to prove anything anymore. That night, respect was redefined. As the red and blue lights echoed over the snow, the dim parking lot suddenly became a movie set. The ambulance doors opened and two paramedics ran out. One with a carrying bag in his hand, the other with the nervousness of, "What am I going to face now?" in his eyes. Brad was sitting against the wall. His face covered in bruises, blood dripping from his nose. Tyler still smelled of garbage, his face red. And Jake, kneeling on the ground, his hand pressed to his chest. The police car pulled up sideways. The door opened, a woman in uniform got out. Her name was Officer Patricia Ward. I've seen her before. We had met at a Veterans Association event at the hospital where Laura worked. When she saw me, a brief smile crossed her face. But the mission was serious. He took out his notepad. "Mr. Archer," he said. "What happened here?" I told him briefly, clearly and honestly. 3 young men harassed us inside the bar. They followed us out. They wanted to attack. I just used evasion and defense techniques and their own speed. Ward nodded. "Defense tactics," he repeated. "Did you learn that in the military?" 20 years Special Forces, retired, I said. Now I'm a civilian security consultant. Laura was next to me, holding my hand. The pride in her eyes was more real than I had ever seen at a medal ceremony. The other officer, a young man named Davidson, was questioning the injured children. He looked up and turned to Ward. "Lieutenant," he said, "the young men's story doesn't match the witnesses' records." Ward raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean?" "All 3 say he attacked us," Davidson said. "But we have at least 4 different phone records. It's clear in the videos. This couple is being followed as they walk, threatened. And each of them self-injures." Pete came up to us, still holding a washcloth. "I've been bartending for 30 years, he said. "I've seen all kinds of fights. But this? This is not a fight. This is 3 drunk kids defying physics and losing." Jake grimaced as the paramedic splinted his hand. Brad needed stitches for his nose. Tyler couldn't wipe the scars of the container adventure from his face. Ward closed his file. "Mr. and Mrs. Archer," he said. "You may leave now. The witness statements and the record completely exonerate you." Lara thanked him. But I stopped for a moment and looked at the three young men. There was no anger in my eyes, only clarity. "Sometimes you learn lessons dearly," I said quietly. "I hope this will last you a lifetime." Jake's eyes filled, he was embarrassed. Brad was still holding his nose. Tyler's pride was in the trash. We got into the car. Lara smiled slightly. "Good job, Yaron," she said. No violence, but justice was served. As I started the engine, sirens continued to echo behind us. Snowflakes melted on the glass. And I just thought. Real power is being in control without touching anything. 2 weeks after that night. Lara turned to me at breakfast, phone in hand. "Yaron, you have to see this," she said, her face both surprised and amused. There was a video on the screen. The title: 3 college kids learn life lessons from ex-military grandpa without punching him. I started watching it while sipping my coffee. One from the bar's security camera. One from the customers' phones. All stitched together. Slow motion, dramatic music. And subtitles: Physics 1 EGO 0. Brad crashing into a wall. Tyler flying into a dumpster. Jake punching a parking meter. It was all back to back with dramatic cuts. At the bottom of the video it said, "Denver's legendary couple, Yaron and Lara Archer." Lara couldn't hold back her laughter. "Yaron, this video is everywhere," she said. "TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Millions are watching it." I looked at the number on the screen. 2.3 million views. And the comments. This guy became a legend without saying a word. Youth, 0, Physics, 1. I'll tell you about that container scene in my graduation speech. Not even Grandpa, Sensei. Some people nicknamed me Marine Grandpa. Lara just laughed. "Look," he said, "someone wrote in that scene, they didn't attack, fate did." But it didn't just stay on social media. Even staff at the hospital where Lara worked shared the video. Within a week, came a letter from the University of Denver's disciplinary board. The 3 teenagers were under investigation for setting a bad example for the community. Brad had to undergo facial surgery. Scarred, he would see that night in the mirror every morning. Tyler's scholarship was cancelled, ending his soccer career. Jake had to give up sports completely because of a broken hand. He was also suspended from school. Lara shared the news over dinner. Brad transferred to another school. Tyler is working as a cashier at the grocery store. Jake's parents left town. I shook my head. Life isn't fair to everyone. But it certainly teaches its lessons. Lara raised her glass. "To lessons, then," he said, laughing. I smiled back. "To consequences," I said. "To consequences." At that moment I realized. Some battles are not won with fists. Some victories come only with patience and integrity. And what happened that night in front of Murphy's was more than a fight. It was a cautionary tale. Against those who think they are strong. A story about how true strength is self-restraint. We returned to Murphy's Tavern on a Friday night, having not forgotten that night. Winter had given way to spring, but there was still the echo of those moments in front of that building. When we walked in the door, Pete, the bartender, lit up when he saw us. "There's our famous couple," he shouted. The whole bar applauded. "First round on me, heroes." Our corner table was still there. A small brass plaque hung above it. Respect was earned here. And the lesson was taught in silence. Lara smiled. "This table feels like ours now," she said. As we ate our dinner, Pete approached and whispered. "I heard about those boys," he said. "They were thrown in different directions. In another city, Brad grew a beard to hide the scars on his face. Tyler was with his family, trying to get a grip on life again. Jake. His hand healed, but his career was over. He still wore gloves, to avoid embarrassment. Lara listened quietly, then asked, "Do you ever feel sorry for them, Yaron?" I thought for a moment. I noticed a young couple sitting at the bar. The man looked at the woman he loved with respect in his eyes. Just as I had looked at Lara all those years ago. "I'm not sad," I finally said. "Because sometimes you can't learn without losing." I only hastened their downfall. Lara raised her glass. "True justice is silence," she said. I smiled. "To peace," I said. "To peace." It was chilly when we went outside. In the light of the street lamps, the flowers that had replaced the snow flickered. Lara took my arm and we walked in silence. As the lights on the Murphy's sign diminished behind us, there was a strange serenity inside me. That night's event was no longer a burden, but a turning point. Some battles aren't won. They're just finished. And that night, I won the biggest victory of my life. By ending the fight without throwing a punch.